buses. Our fund balance, as you noted, is way over what our policy says it should be. Working with Albany to get perhaps a slice of Uber or MTA payroll tax to pay for our public transportation. There's money in the county, sitting in the county right now, about $2.5 million that was bonded for buses that was never used. So I beg to differ. It's not in good shape, especially when it hurts our most vulnerable. And we're talking about transit-oriented development and keeping our young people. They're not driving. They're not getting their licenses, their cars like we did. They rely on these buses. If we want to have economic development here, people have to be able to get to work, to get to their internships, to get to school. Okay, I'll pass on the mic, but I just want to say that I have to just disagree with you very heartily there.
Thank you. Nassau County is not easy. There's nothing easy here at all, but we're all here because it's worth it. One of our special challenges is something Laura spoke about, and it has to do with transportation services. We've got the Long Island Railroad that runs east and west. North-south access is always a problem. We have relied on the buses. We did, and when the MTA ran the system, it wasn't perfect, but it was a whole lot better than the system that we have today. Now, Nassau County, I read, always seems to have a surplus. Now, some experts in finances say that that's a little deceptive because generally accepted accounting principles mandate that borrowed money is not revenue. It's not to be counted as surplus funds. But given that, for whatever reason, Nassau County does have this surplus, then I agree with Laura. Let's take some of that surplus money and let's use it for the buses. Let's take some of that surplus money and use it for youth services. Let's take some of that surplus money and use it for senior services. Let's take some of that purported surplus that we seem to have year after year after year, which has been certified by our county government, and why don't we just use it to make life here a little easier and to make community a little stronger in Nassau County?
Let me say that I'm the only one here, I believe, that has an MBA in finance or worked in the financial industry. As you know, happy to meet you. As you know, the county finances have to be audited annually by outside auditors, such as Deloitte and now RSM. And the term GAAP, or General Accounting Principles, have been pronounced, but I don't think people know what that means. In many cases, they just know the acronym. But the county finances, by law, have to be audited by outside independent accounting firms, CPA firms, and they've been audited every year. And the record has been, by auditing standards, outside opinions, 4 years on a GAAP basis, the county has had a surplus, and 2 years there was a small deficit, and the result is that the fund balance or savings in the county has grown from 10 million to 160 million. Now, we've heard many good suggestions now that we saved that money, how to put it to good use, and we should. Absolutely we should. It's more money than we need, whether it be to go towards providing more funding to the bus service, introducing new innovative transportation techniques. We should use that. But we also need to fix our tax assessment system and not continue to penalize our seniors, especially with undue and unjust taxation, which they cannot afford. Now, Laura spoke about, the budget. She sits on the county legislature. She has an opportunity to ask questions when the budget is approved or when the controller reports. And I've never heard her complain, raise any issues. she actually, with regards to the bus service, you know, she voted for the budget, and then she complains that, you know, that she shows up to complain that the service is cut. You can't have it both ways. So we have to know what the facts are, and be honest with ourselves, and address the real issues that are confronting us, which is corruption, you know, which is unaffordable housing, which is the quality of our water, which is opportunities for our young people in building a new economy. Those are the issues that we should be talking about and addressing. The county is pretty good financially. So let's talk about some of the other issues. And the water quality that we have is a growing crisis that we have to address. We don't want to be the next Flint here out in Long Island. So we do have a lot of important issues that we'll be talking tonight. Thank you.
All right, so what else do you want to talk about tonight? I think we got to defer to Henry.
Your conversation is still ongoing unless you guys have finished talking. Can you talk to each other rather than
Yes.
just see each other?
You want me to talk about it?
So, I find it interesting, George. I don't know if you actually listen to the Ledge meetings, but anyway, no one wants to get into that right now. I obviously do talk and did not vote for the budget and have been very much on the forefront in fighting for our communities. I would also like to talk about the issue of race here in Nassau County. As we all know, Nassau County is becoming more diverse, but it is becoming more segregated. And I'm very proud to live in a community in Baldwin, Long Island, which is sort of an anomaly for the rest of the county. And I'd be curious to know what you think of this. It's on my block alone, we have people from all over. I have a Jamaican restaurateur who she actually owns Dunn's River, the Jamaican restaurant here in Nassau County, which is very good. We have mixed race couples, African American, us white people. We have my Panamanian friend across the street, and it kind of works. And I have a friend who's a cop who he patrols the 1st Precinct, which is in Baldwin, and he said to me, you know, that high school of yours, where my daughter goes to school, that's like the UN, and it really works. And I said, I know. And I actually got started. I'm not a career politician, as I said before. I'm a newspaper reporter before. I got involved in public service when I ran for local school board because I felt, and I campaigned on the idea that my community of Baldwin could be a beacon, not only for the rest of the county, but for the rest of the country. Because it's solidly middle class. It's not like you have the rich people here and the poor people there. It all kind of works. And this is something that I would like to amplify and say to the rest of Nassau County, you don't have to be afraid of diversity. That's our strength. And I think it's a gift for our children, our 3 daughters, to be raising them in Baldwin. It gives them an edge. It gives them an edge in our dynamic, very fast-changing 21st century. And it's something that I'm very proud of. So just throwing it out there.
I think the 3 of us ought to do everything we can do to avoid invective, having one person accuse someone else of whatever. But on the subject that you've touched upon, Laura, I live in the little city of Glen Cove. And Joel Meyerowitz is here from the little city of Glen Cove, and we've got some other little people here. Glen Cove is one of the most diverse communities on Long Island, and it's one of the most diverse and fascinating communities in the United States. So Laura, I share your passion for living in a real world community, a community of diversity and strength. And I think that that is important for us to speak about this evening, because we know the signals that are coming from Washington, D.C. You know the attitudes that are going to flow from the Trump administration. And I am concerned that if we are balkanized, if we are factionalized, if we're not ready to stand up for each other, we are going to lose. And we are going to lose big, and we're going to lose our communities. Long Island is a great, great place. It's beautiful. We've got the ocean, we've got the sound. We are a few miles away from one of the world's great cities. We have communities in which we live in great places to bring up families and to protect our children and to make sure our children have the experience of valuing cultures of different children. So this is what we will fight for. And I think that the three of us believe that. And I think that that's what makes us Democrats. And I think that we have to avoid pointing fingers at each other. Although, to tell you the truth, it's kind of fun to do that. And George and I have done that plenty of times in the past. But let's not do that this evening. Let's not. Let's stay loyal Democrats, because without this strength, we're going to see more tragedies coming out of the Trump administration. And I grew up in these little towns in Wisconsin and Michigan that voted 4 years ago for Obama. Those little towns face a hopelessness today. Those little towns changed the election. Those little towns delivered the White House to President Trump. We let, as Democrats, our guard down, and we did this on a national level. I don't want to see us do it here in Nassau County, because the next presidential election and the next national elections in 2 years are going to depend entirely on our strength in the suburbs. And if we are disunited, and we don't have a strong voice to represent our suburban interests, which are our community interests, we are going to face more of what's making us so anxious today. So let's keep this civil, and let's stay strong, and let's stay united.
Thank you, Chuck. Absolutely unity, I believe in that. And we'll all come together. And whoever is the person that you elect in the primary in September, I believe, I certainly will support that candidate, whoever it may be, whether it be Laura or Charles right here. But we need to look beyond, underneath the surface of what's happening in our various communities, especially our minority communities that now, as I indicated, are approaching about 40% of our population. And the fact is, that there is underemployment, there are not adequate jobs, there is unaffordable housing, and their own government, Nassau County government, is not their government. As I indicated, the number of minority jobs in Nassau County are less than 10%. The number of minorities in the police department are less than 5%. An incredible disconnect between what our communities, demographics are, and what is the profile of Nassau County government. That has to change. The same thing is true with regards to the opportunities that we provide or open for minorities and women in Nassau County government. The state has already moved to 30% in terms of opportunities, business opportunities for minorities. We're still stuck at about 10%. And we're in violation of state and federal regulations, because we take a lot of money from the state and the federal, and yet we're not spending it the way we should be spending it. And I've been a very strong advocate, and that's why we established the committee. But very critical for these minorities, and for our young people, and for our seniors, is affordable housing. And we have done nothing to provide more affordable housing for the cross-section of our population. And that's an area that we need to focus on, because it's going to become a crisis. Thank you.
On each of the tables, there are a number of, and on our website, there are a number of questions that were composed, some of them by some of us within the club, and some of them by writing in following the announcements that we've sent around and asked solicited questions. So I guess there are about 45 questions altogether. And at this stage of this proceeding, we're going to let these candidates pick one question each for them and the others to answer, which they think is a critical question. and the sequence in which those questions will be selected will be the same as the opening statements. So, Laura, what question there would you like to respond to and have your associates also respond to?
How about number 7? So, should I read the question? All right. So what, if anything, should the county do to prevent sweetheart contracts, conflicts of interest, corruption, and partisan spoils system of unnecessary and excessive spending? So you'll see I have that's not going to solve the problem. I have 2 posters that I've made up how we're going to fix the mess in Mineola. An independent inspector general. We need it, and we need it now. There's no doubt about it. We need term limits on all levels of government. When these guys get in office, they stay, they don't go anywhere, and it just gets worse and worse. We need open and transparent. We need open and transparent.
Turn away from the...
We can look right to the west of us. New York City has something called Vendex, and it's a vendor database, and it has every contract and the history of the contract, the history of the contractor, the performance history, all there for everyone to see. Now, yes, the contracts are online, but we don't have this kind of database that everyone can access to see who gave what contribution to what politician, what kind of job they're doing. This is something that I proposed in the legislature. I wrote a letter to all of the fellow legislators and the administration that this is something that we should be starting to implement. Very small steps have been taken, but it's taking too long. We've got to push it along. We've got to make it happen. We can't wait for this. It's too important. The other thing that I would argue is that we, this is where, hang on just a second, I have it written down. I want to make sure I get it right. Yes, so believe it or not, in Nassau County we have an ethics board. Yes, we do. And we have an ethics code. I know it's hard to believe because it's Nassau County. We need to dust off that ethics code, update it, and reform the ethics board and make sure that they have the teeth and the resources to do what they need to do. We also need to end nepotism. You know, just because you're somebody's brother-in-law or somebody's wife doesn't mean you're going to get that no-show job. Because guess who's paying for it? We are. What is the tax money supposed to be meant for? It's not for the job program for these guys. It's for paving the roads, fixing the sewers, keeping up the college, funding the buses, helping homeless people, the very important services that people expect from municipal government. Municipal government is pretty simple when you get down to it. What is it? It's cops, it's roads, it's the jail, it's the parks, it's the sewers. Let's put the money towards that. Make sure that we have all of these very concrete things we can do in place to make that happen. It's not hard, right? It's actually pretty simple, and we got to do it to fix the mess. There's no other way.
Thank you, Laura. I couldn't agree more. I want to follow up on something Laura mentioned, and it had to do with the ethics board. I've been very privileged to serve in Albany as the chairman of the Assembly Standing Committee on Ethics and also as the co-chair of the New York State Legislative Ethics Commission. These are the only 2 governmental units that are purely bipartisan, equal numbers of Democrats, equal numbers of Republicans. And I was very privileged to be asked to head a bipartisan task force to rewrite the Assembly's policy on sexual harassment and retaliation. And the product that we arrived at is a national model, and it provides for something that our great Senator Kirsten Gillibrand has been fighting for, and she deserves our support in her fight. She's trying to protect military members from sexual harassment. In the military today, just as in the Assembly years ago, if someone wants to make a complaint about sexual harassment, they have to make it in the chain of command. So how likely is some soldier to make a claim of sexual harassment against the general's buddy or the colonel's buddy? We have, in the Assembly, removed the reporting requirement from the chain of command. We have a truly independent person who is not beholden to the leadership of the Assembly. He's a professor of law. It is good. and it makes a real difference, and I'm very proud to have done that. Whoever will be the next county executive better have a sense of integrity and better have a sense of ethics, because we see what's happened when we have someone who has no sense of integrity and no sense of ethics, and someone who's enabled by a political party which only seeks to profit. Now, I want to mention just a couple of things. I've been very fortunate as well over the years to have served on my city council, to have served on the planning board, to have represented, along with Judge Meyerowitz, the city of Glen Cove in complex civil litigation, and also to have served 2 terms, and please don't report this, the reporters can't report this, as counsel, general counsel to the North Country Reformed Temple, my synagogue, where I will tell you I saw more fierce and bare-knuckled politics than I've ever seen in secular government. But I do know this, that I have a fair amount of experience in government, and I was not a career politician because I practiced law until I went to the assembly. But there is a question here that I want to address, and it's question number 5. Time out, but I didn't even get to the meat of the matter yet. When do I get to talk about my question? These are complicated issues, but George, take it away.
I agree that our next county executive has to be somebody with unquestionable integrity, because it's the county executive that awards the contracts, that decides who gets the contracts, that gives honest contracts that are value to the county or sweetheart contracts. It's the county executive that does it. So let's not delegate it, to an inspector general, a job that we elect the county executive to do on our behalf. Okay? That is the bottom line here. And that has, I'm surprised that it's not being talked about or expected. And you cannot have a county executive that takes money from special interests and not be beholden to them and continue to award sweetheart contracts. That's the essence of it. So if you want to change it, and we must change it, we need to take the money out of politics, have real reform, like New York City, take the politics, let's have public financing of our elections, and let's hold our county executive accountable for the job that he's elected to do. It's critically important. That's how we're going to solve this problem, through integrity, and experience, and to make sure that these contracts, sweetheart contracts to special interest groups, does not continue. Thank you.
Now I can ask my question. All right. Thank you, George. Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Laura. Question number 5. I'm starting to feel like a game show host almost. Question number 5. The county has contracted to private companies substantial aspects of its systems for bus transportation, which we've discussed, jail service, water treatment. Has the privatization worked out as promised? I want to warn you about something that's going on, and it's something that Ed Mangano and I have had a real fight about. After Superstorm Sandy, we used FEMA money, federal money, and we improved our water and sewer system, the Nassau Water and Sewer Authority. A ton of money was put into this because it was subpar to begin with. Mangano and his friends want to lease this to a private company. Now, what I have learned, and I've learned this from speaking with people on various parts of the political spectrum. One of the people I spoke to is George Marland. George Marland is an ultra-conservative who was on the Nassau Interim Financing Authority and fought very hard for what was right. Marlon, who happens to be a friend, tells me, if we lease this, it's good news and bad news. Good news is we'll get a sudden influx of money, what's called in government a one-shot. That's what we'll get. And then for 30 years or so, we will have a private company running this system that controls our sewers and our water. Now, Marlon tells me, no is right. Marlon tells me that whoever's going to invest in this company is going to demand such a high rate of return on their investment that people who live in our homes, people who have businesses, are going to pay through the nose for water and sewer usage. If anything is going to hurt our ability to continue to function as a community that includes people who have assets, people who are middle class, and people who are struggling to be middle class, it's going to be if we are held at the mercy of a private corporation that's going to control what is and should be part of the public trust. Whoever is the next county executive, do not let them do this. This is going to adversely affect our quality of life for the next half century. Some of us won't be around to see that. But if you are like me and you want your kids and your grandchildren to be able to live in Nassau County, stand strongly and do not allow this to happen. Enough of this privatization, which becomes not privatization, but it becomes piratization. We don't need to be victimized again. We deserve better. Thank you. I get to go again, Henry?
Chuck, you're right. Every privatization done by this administration has been a failure. The bus privatization has failed. We're paying more, and every year we're cutting service. The sewer privatization has not delivered the $10 million in annual savings that was promised. So that hasn't worked. And of course, we know the disaster that we've had with the jail medical provider. That hasn't worked either. You know, supposedly we were supposed to save about $6 million a year, but now we're facing a liability of close to $50 million potentially. So that hasn't worked. So so I think we have to end privatization in every regard, and I think my friend Chuck gave a number of good reasons. Bring it in-house, but we need to, and bring it in-house won't succeed either if we don't have a competent county executive with experience. Experience is critically important. That you can buy, you can claim that you're going to hire the best and brightest, but at the end of the day, the county executive has to make the decision. And bring a team together and have them work together to accomplish goals and hold them accountable. Things don't happen by themselves. The way you perpetuate waste in government is by having an ineffective, inexperienced county executive. We've paid a very steep price in the past 8 years because we've had an inexperienced, ineffective, and dishonest or unethical county executive. That has to end. Privatization has to end. We can do it better. Government should be able to do it better, but we need a competent county executive. Thank you.
So public-private partnerships, P3s as they're called in the jargon. Actually, I think we have some common ground here. I think that the county and the way they've managed these three public-private partnerships has not worked because there hasn't been the management. It has not been managed correctly. So, the buses, $60 million more that we've been paying that it's cost than promised when it was first sold to us, $60 million. The sewage. So I think the sewage is working, obviously, right? It's not coming up through the toilet However, it's not producing the synergy savings that were promised. Again, a bill of goods. Armor has been a disaster. You just have to pick up Newsday over the past year to see the cost and what's happened in human life and in liability, as George pointed out. The one thing that I would say about Armor is that built into their contract were performance measures, right? They were supposed to keep data and give it to the county monthly. And I was looking around and I realized this wasn't happening. We weren't getting the data. So I wrote to the sheriff and to the county executive and I said, let's see the data. So I waited a while and I waited a while and then I got something that was just this put together at the last minute sort of thing. The data that was given to me, it's things like how many people have gotten tuberculosis, how many, all the different data. It was so slipshod and it was so self-contradictory that it was inconsistent and really amateurish. It was like a kid, stayed up late to do it the night before, forgot to do the homework. But yet they were getting paid. They were getting paid. Armor, I think it was $12 million a year. Until this report came out, I got the information, and that's when Maragos, the controller, decided to stop paying Armor because they weren't meeting the performance measures. But for the previous 5 years, it was fine. It was fine to pay them. So that to me is a lack of management, and it's a lack of accountability, and that's just one small symbol of the problems in this county. It was in the contract. It was in black and white, and it wasn't being done. And then it wasn't being checked. So, sometimes I do have a background as a newspaper reporter. Sometimes you do have to ferret things out. It shouldn't be that way in government. It should be open, it should be transparent, and it should be done properly. We shouldn't need investigative reporters to ferret out information.
I'm going to select 6. Is that okay? Okay. So number 6 is, for years it has been said that the tax assessment system is broken. Okay. Specifically, what is wrong with it? How should it be fixed? And how long will it take to fix it? Let me speculate. Are you all homeowners in this room, or most of you? Okay. I can tell you that you're paying higher property taxes than you should because of the broken tax assessment system. And I'll go even further and tell you that the system is not broken, but it's fixed. It's rigged against you. Because unless you file a grievance, and more so, unless you file a grievance through one of the big tax search firms that are politically connected, you're not getting a fair deal. And you're picking up the burden for those higher-end homes that use those politically connected tax firms that get a substantial tax assessment reductions, and the burden is shifted to the mid-income and low-income homes that do not hire these expensive attorneys or don't file a grievance at all. Newsday wrote an article that in the past 6 years, about a month ago, that the total burden has been shifted to the extent of $1.7 billion in the last 6 years, from high-end homes to mid-income to low-income homes. Those people that do not grieve, and that's about 60% of our homes in Nassau County are paying a higher property tax, and they're subsidizing the higher-end homes. That's the reality. And I pointed out this would happen in a study back in 2011. And nobody did anything about it. The legislature didn't pick it up. The county executive didn't pick it up. And that is injustice at the very core of our democracy, where those that are least able to afford to pay are subsidizing those that can. And that has existed, and nobody has done anything to change it, to make it right. And again, I stress, it's not an accident. It's rigged, and it's to the advantage of those politically connected law firms, and insiders, and it has to end. It has to end, because that is why a lot of our people are losing their homes, they're abandoning their homes, they're becoming zombie homes, and our young people are not able to afford to live here. And the fix is simple. The fix is simple. You know, nobody should be able to win. When our tax assessment, if you read it, and also Newsday pointed out, all the homes are underassessed by at least 30% to their market value. So nobody should be able to go to court and say that their home is overassessed. Every one of them. And yet, these high-priced attorney, political insiders, go to court, take the county to court, and say, no, the market value of this home is 50% less than the market value. You know, and the county attorney puts no fight over it. Just accepts it, gives them a deal, and away they go. And then for the people that don't appeal their taxes for whatever reason, the county should take the responsibility to equal the playing field. And that could be done immediately, the same year, and the injustice should end to the benefit of 60% of our population. Thank you.
So the assessment system is a big problem. There's two fundamental problems with it. The first is that the assessments are not correct, right? People rely on the government to tell you what your assessment is. Ed Mangano campaigned on a promise to fix the assessment system, but it's only gotten worse. So how do we fix it? We need a qualified assessor. The county charter, which is sort of the constitution of our county, its law, mandates that we have a qualified professional assessor. We don't have that. We have an acting assessor who doesn't have the degree. Nice guy, doesn't have the degree. We also need to check the values every 3 to 5 years. Make sure they're up to date, make sure they're current, make sure they're accurate. Again, we're in the 21st century. There's software that we have access to, that we could help do this. Let's use it. Let's make it happen. There's a whole other problem. So the first and fundamental problem is getting the assessments right in the first place, because clearly they're not correct. The second is, how do we deal with the refunds in a fair and transparent process? And this is something the eyes will glaze over if I begin to explain this now, but let me tell you, there is a great and very intriguing idea out there that I'm seriously considering, and we can talk about it after if you really want to talk about assessment more. But the bottom line is, right, government, pretty finite responsibilities. Assessment, setting the assessments is one of them. Not doing it right, and it does result in inequities. We do have people who don't have the wherewithal to grieve their taxes, subsidizing everyone else who does. And meanwhile, all of our tax rates go up. Not good.
We have a unique system in Nassau County. No other county in the United States has this. And we've had it since 1938. And nobody could figure it out in 1938, and nobody can figure it out now. Now, I just want to mention one quick thing, because I don't want to give you false hope. Senator John Brooks is advancing a plan that deals with the awarding of tax grievances. So people grieve their taxes, and you know, I envy the people who do. I can't, because I'm afraid if I'm granted some help, people will view it as political. But those who do succeed in getting money back, get money back. John Brooks' plan is you don't get money back, but you get a credit. Now, a credit is still something of value. So I'm not so sure that my friend John Brooks' plan, which I'm going to look at, which he hasn't drafted yet in the Senate, is going to actually save us from the crisis of continually having to grieve our taxes. But I will tell you this, that given that we are the only county in the United States that has this bizarre system, I think that if we can arrive at some consensus between the homeowners and the taxpayers, and the business people who own real property, and the state Senate, and the state assembly, and the Nassau legislature, and the county executive, there's no reason we cannot change this overall system to make it more modern, more efficient, and much less competitive. Now, here is the heart of the problem. In 1938, when it was determined that Nassau County would be responsible for assessing all the properties in Nassau County, Nassau County assumed the responsibility of what's called the county guarantee. That means the county pays back whatever people get back. If you grieve your school taxes and you get money back, that doesn't come from the school budget, that comes from the county budget. Now, in some ways, it shouldn't matter too terribly much, because in the end, people still are going to get some money back. And does it matter that much if it's the county or the school districts? It does, because don't underestimate the fact there are a lot of vested interests in this entire system. And Laura, you touched on it. When Ed Mangano was first elected, he assembled a group of so-called experts to change the system, to incorporate a new way, fair way of doing this. Now, who did he put on this group of 5 people? Put a bunch of the lawyers who are making millions of dollars by handling the tax grievances. Now, where I come from, out in the rural part of the country, that's like putting the wolves in charge of the sheep. So, we need this. We need community consensus to bring about change. We need to make sure that our elected representatives in the state Senate and in the Assembly and at the Nassau legislature and the county executive hear from the community, because isn't it about time that we started to respect the voters? Isn't it about time that we started to listen to input from the people who are so affected by these decisions? I think it is. So as county executive, I will meet with people throughout the county. We will discuss this. We will bring in the best experts in the field, and we will change this system so that Nassau County citizens aren't faced with the utterly cynical obligation of having to grieve their taxes. Our county legislators hold meetings throughout the county on how people should grieve their taxes. Well, that to me is a cynical exploitation of government, and I think there's enough cynicism around today. This is something that can be changed. It will be changed if we elect the right person as county executive, but it's something that can no longer be tolerated.
I'm going to touch a few. But Richard?
Hi, everybody. We've done a rather creditable job in reviewing some of the material and the issues that have been put forward. So I'm looking through the list to determine what has not yet been touched on, and I see something that would probably be of interest to many of you, namely, what actions should the county take against illegal prescriptions and illicit drug use? Incidentally, there was just a gathering in Rockville Center this past week on that particular issue, so I'm sure you realize it's something of rather pressing importance.
Thank you, Dr. Skolnick. So, yes, this is a very, very serious problem. Prescription drugs, heroin, opiates, opioids. We have, I want to call you Professor Plum, Claudio Rotundo from the Baldwin Council Against Drug Abuse, who's really on the front lines fighting in our community for this. So thank you. So there's 2 aspects to this. There's enforcement, but I don't think we can arrest our way out of the heroin epidemic. And it really raises some fundamental questions about who we are as a society and what's going on in our families and our communities and with our young people, that they're becoming addicted like this. So there are things that we can do on the county level, some actual concrete specific things. One thing that breaks my heart every year when we're at the end of the budget season and everything is in crisis and we're trying to cobble everything together and keep things, one thing that's always on the chopping block is programs for our youth. These include runaway programs, drug programs, just, simple after-school homework programs. But because the county is not mandated to pay for these, they're on the chopping block. And every year, there's this struggle to hold on to them, and then they become a bargaining chip for other things. And this, to me, is such a fundamental thing that we need to fund, and we need to do a better job of making sure that they get paid on time, because often a lot of these contracts get held up in the system, and they don't get, the money doesn't get to the places where they need to be. They can't make payroll, and then what happens? If I am lucky enough to be elected county executive, I will make sure there is recurring revenue for these programs. And it's not just liberal do-goodism, it's actually important for our economy. If we're not taking care of our kids now, before the problems really blossom, what's that going to do to our public safety costs, our incarceration costs? People aren't productive members of society. What's that going to happen to our communities? So this is something that I want to have a holistic look at. It's something I'm very, very passionate about, and I don't think that these programs should be used as a bargaining chip. I think that it is our responsibility as human beings, not to mention as stewards of government and finance, to make sure that people are getting the services that they need and the education that they need.
If I knew the answer about how to cure drug addiction, I'd be very happy to tell you. Like many of you here, I've lost dear friends and lost family members to drug addiction. But I do know this, that last year, New York State finally committed to spending $150 million to address this crisis. Now that's not nearly enough. And I'll tell you something else. I've been at the Nassau County Legislature during budget season, and I have seen who on the legislature is sensitive to this issue, and it's the Democrats. It's not the Republicans. I've been there. I've been there when the people who run the drug agencies have to come in and beg and grovel for funding. I've been there to see youth services have to do the same thing, and senior services have to do the same thing. It's demeaning, it's unnecessary, it's a horribly cynical charade. So I will tell you this. The next county executive will preside in the year 2000. In the year 2000, we get a new census. And immediately, it's time to redraw the districts of the 2020. 2020.
Thank you.
It's time, 2020. It's time to redraw the districts. I was at the Nassau legislature and spoke against the cynical way this was done in 2010. If we have districts that are fairly drawn, we will have legislators who more accurately reflect the sensitivities of our overall community and the political background of our overall community. And our overall Nassau community is majority Democrat. You wouldn't know that by going to the county legislatures. So you have my promise that as county executive, I will do everything humanly possible to make sure that the next legislatures drawn after the census are fairly drawn and scientifically drawn, and that's what we need, because as long as we suffer with a Nassau legislature that is overwhelmingly controlled by Republicans, and Republicans want to spend money for tax cuts. They don't want to spend money. They don't want to spend money for youth services, for senior services, or to make sure that our kids are protected from drug addiction. A little ray of hope, and then I'm going to sit down. There are some Northern European countries that have experimented with a new modality, a new way to treat drug addiction, especially with younger people. But it's expensive, and it involves social workers, and it involves social workers establishing communities, and it involves social workers working with their families at very, very early ages to make sure these young people feel valued and protected. We can do this if we really want to do this, but it's going to require a change in the way our Nassau government is constituted.
We seem to agree on one thing tonight, and that is that we cannot cut youth services. We need to spend more towards youth services. And I want to point out that when the legislature and the county executive proposed cutting services and actually cut them back in 2012-13, I did a study, I authorized a study that actually proved that there is greater benefit or greater return on what is being spent on youth services than what it costs. And as a result, the cuts were restored. So I'm very proud of that accomplishment. But this crisis, the opiate crisis, the drug epidemic that we have, came as a surprise, and it should not have. It was last year that our police commissioner with the county executive and the district attorney had a press conference to tell us that we had an opiate epidemic. Well, what have they been doing for the past 3-4 years in order for it not to become an epidemic? And that's why I've been very critical of the police department and the mismanagement. Because we're not putting our resources, our public safety resources, where they're needed most. But we're paying police officers sitting behind desks that are nearing retirement, and we pay them over $200,000 in overtime in addition to their salaries. Now we're going to, this past year, 15% of the police officers are approaching $300,000. We're not applying our resources, our money, where they can do the most good to protect our youth, to protect our communities. We've also been hearing recently about gangs in our communities. Nothing is being done there. We talk about it, but nothing is being done. And what do you think gangs do? They sell drugs. And it shouldn't come as a surprise to us. And that's why we need to have a knowledgeable, competent county executive that understands the issues and is willing to tackle them. Thank you.
Thank you. This is not the end of it, but I need to do this. I need to acknowledge some people that's here, so we'll take a break and do that. And then we'll continue.
Upon undocumented folks, would you, as county executive, feel obliged to some way provide support or protection for these vulnerable groups?
Thank you, Dr. Skolnick. Yes, this is so much on our minds now when we have Jewish centers with bomb threats, our Muslim brothers and sisters are feeling targeted and threatened. The thing that I'm concerned about, let's talk about the enforcement aspect first. Our police should not be deputized as immigration agents. The most important thing in public safety is trust between police and the communities that they serve, that they protect. And if people are pushed further into the shadows, afraid to go to school, afraid to go to church, afraid to go to their places of worship, afraid to, say, call in a domestic violence complaint because they don't want to be exposed, what's that going to do to our neighborhoods? What's that going to do to our communities? And it's so important that the police can do their job. They have a tough job. We talked about the heroin epidemic and everything else. And that people can feel safe. I mean, if you live in Nassau County, the police are there to protect you, period, not to cart you away. And thank you very much. And I have to say, as county executive, I would make sure that people are protected. I take Commissioner Crumter at his word. He says that he has no plans to deputize our police to be ICE agents, and I hope that he follows through on that. The last thing that we need is a climate of fear here in Nassau County, where we, as I said before, we're diverse. We may be segregated, but we are diverse, and we have to take care of ourselves and of our people. Thank you.
very lucky. In fact, I wouldn't be here were it not for the fact that a little girl once hid in a hay wagon during a pogrom. And she was my grandmother. And she came to hiding in that hay wagon, she saw people murdered. She saw other children. She was a little girl. When she came to the United States and landed at Castle Garden, her name changed from Hadassah Mahmoud to Esther Weiss. And I have her papers, and she was such an American that she became Esther White. And the reason I tell you this is that she died 10 years ago at 106. And her great fear over the course of the last few years of her life was that she would lose her citizenship. Now, we are not so far removed from the experiences my grandmother had as a 5 or a 6-year-old. We are not. And there are people in this country who would like to take us back to the days when we used to go and bait Jews or bait black people or persecute. And there are far too many of them. Now, my wife Ronnie is here somewhere, and after the election, she and I were fearful. I hadn't sensed that fear since the days of Nixon. So if I am fearful and I am born here, I can only imagine the fears of those who are here, perhaps without proper documentation, but they're here with families. We must stand together. We will not allow our police forces in Nassau County to become immigration officers. We will not. We will lose a part of our community, and we cannot afford to do that. Now, I will tell you this, the New York State Assembly, and Tony Durso voted for this as well. We voted to keep New York State from complying with Trump's immigration policies. Our tragedy is that that bill will not see the light of day in a Republican-dominated New York State Senate. So I have given my pledge of honor to my friend, Dr. Esma Chowdhury at the Islamic Center of Long Island, that I will do what I did before Trump was elected. I will continue to speak out for human rights and for the basic dignity of each and every one of us. I have someone who works for me who's here solely because of DACA. And if you don't think I'm worried that I'm going to lose this kid who's as American as my kids, you're mistaken. The chips are on the line here. What we believe in our hearts matters. It really does matter. Let's make sure the next county executive is ready, willing, and able to be a champion for individuals, a champion for everyone who's here in Nassau County. Thank you.
I'm an immigrant. I came when I was 8 years old. So I can share the experience, what is going on in our communities and our country right now. But history has taught us that when you see injustice and you remain silent, you're just as complicit. There is a lot of fear being spread throughout our communities right now. We've had ICE rounding up immigrants, truckloads of them, and nobody has spoken up. We all talk about what we're going to do, but we're not speaking up as to what is happening right now, right here in Nassau County. And I was the only one that spoke up. I was the only one that spoke up, and I went to various Muslim community centers and spoke out about it, and spoke that the Trump immigration ban was un-American. It violated the very essence of our American Constitution, not to discriminate on the basis of national origin or religion. And yet, we are not speaking up as a community. And our police department is sitting idly by, and it's great to say that you're not going to enforce the immigration law, but when you see truckloads of our citizens, residents, being rounded up without due process, and we remain silent, we are just as complicit. And we all need to stand together and speak up that this injustice doesn't happen. And I've already spoken up, and I invite all the legislature and all public officials to take a stand and speak up against the fear that is spreading. Thank you.
Ask you, to someone here who feels they have the question of the night, the question that has not been touched on, a fair question to ask each of these three people to answer. Anyone?
I would like to ask the controller, you were talking about the county budget and everything, but you've been the controller in the Republican administration for 6 or 7 years. Why did you switch parties, and why is all of a sudden we're in such great financial shape?
Very good question. Thank you for asking. Okay. With regards to the financial, those are audited results. The money's in the bank. You can. That's indisputable. Whether people want to fabricate stories and spread fear, and inaccuracies, that's up to them. But again, the results are audited by the outside auditors, such as Deloitte, RSM, big national accounting firms, and the money is in the bank. And furthermore, the county has not raised property taxes. There was only one time in 6 years now of less than 2%. What has happened, and I've spoken up against it, that some of the surpluses, which under general accounting rules and governmental accounting, the borrowing is treated as revenues. And I spoke out about it, that we should not be borrowing, we should be cutting borrowing, and I've been an outspoken advocate against borrowing. But the bottom line is the county is in better financial shape now than it was. And as I spoke before, we have other bigger issues that we should be talking about. The corruption, the unaffordable housing, the protecting our water and our environment, our public transportation systems that are falling apart. Those are the issues that as Democrats we should be talking about. Okay. With regards to why I switched parties, because I found that the Republican Party, I was in private industry for 35 years. I came into politics to be of public service, to give back to the community. And what I found is that the Republican Party was self-serving, was not serving the community. There were no minorities in the Republican Party. And they talk about fiscal responsibility, but what we've seen is they take care of the special interests, fiscal irresponsibility. And I was continuously at odds with them in terms of staying fiscally responsible. And I was being criticized. I was getting criticized for going into the minority communities. I would go to Republican events, and they would be mostly, I don't want to talk against seniors, but white seniors. That's not why I came into government, to be a public government, which was to be of public service. And furthermore, I found, because I was criticized for going to the minority communities, I feel deep down that the purpose of government is to take care of those that cannot take care of themselves. Not to take care of the ones that are well off. Those people can take care of themselves. We don't need corporate welfare. And that is what is pervasive in the Republican Party today. So, that was completely foreign to me. And that is why, after a lot of soul searching, I've made the decision, because fundamentally I wanted to be of public service and give back to the community, that the only way I could do it was to switch parties. My values, I felt with time, they were more aligned with the Democratic Party, and I feel now, since switching, I feel very, very comfortable, and at home in the Democratic Party. And I've gotten a lot of Democrats come out to me and certainly have been welcoming, and I hope you all here are welcoming as well, because the Democratic Party, I think, is and should be inclusive. Thank you.
I like George. Even when I was campaigning with Howard Weitzman against George, George is an affable guy. And I'm also a student of history and a student of religious history. And I ask you, should we not welcome him with open arms to the Democratic Party? After all, yes, of course, after all, it's been a couple of thousand years since we had an epiphany such as Paul had on the road to Tarsus. And when those things happen, they don't happen that often. So let's welcome him to the Democratic Party. Every 2,000 years.
You mentioned that the Republican Party was not inclusive, and I do think that the Democratic Party is much more inclusive. But I do have to point out to the audience that when you ran for Senate, when you ran in a primary to unseat, yes, did I say state? I'm sorry, thank you. When you ran for U.S. Senate to unseat Kirsten Gillibrand, you were in the primary, you campaigned on and prided yourself on proposing an amendment to ban same-sex marriage as a constitutional amendment. So changing the U.S. Constitution so that there will be no same-sex marriage. That to me is not very inclusive. And you've also said, and it's been in the paper, that gay marriage, same-sex marriage, is akin to marrying your pet. And that is not democratic values. Sorry to point it out, but it's there, and not only was it not inclusive, it was so far to the right, and so exclusive, I guess would be the word, that I think as Democrats, we need to know that. We need to be aware of that.
I need to respond to that because it's very important. First of all, you know, I misspoke, and I apologize for making those statements. So I'm somebody who makes a mistake. I admit that I made a mistake, and I apologize for it, unlike other people. Furthermore, as I said, I've evolved in my values, and I accept, you know, now that gay marriage is a state of the law, and every person, regardless of his sexual orientation, ethnic origin, deserves to have the same opportunities, the same rights, you know, and I believe that wholeheartedly. Okay, so that's I feel completely aligned with the democratic values. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to know what your ideas on the Tobacco 21 for Nassau County, because it's already been approved in North Hempstead as well as the city and Suffolk County.
I would support raising the smoking age to 21, as well as the drinking age. We have too many of our young people, you know, dying on the roads, you know, and developing terrible habits. So as a government, as a society, whatever we can do to protect our kids, we should definitely do so. Too many of them are dying, you know, too many are, you know, we should not be encouraging, you know, smoking that becomes addictive. If we're talking about fighting epidemics, opiate epidemics, drug epidemics, certainly tobacco is a drug. Thank you.
Randy, thanks. That's a good question, and Randy, thanks for all you do. Randy is a tireless fighter for making sure good people get elected to office, even though I'm surprised you don't have a LAVINE sticker on. But I have voted consistently in the New York State Assembly for any and every measure that will increase the age for smoking cigarettes. We have a battle going on now, as has Tony Durso. We have a battle going on with these e-cigarettes, these vapor cigarettes. And we're fighting to make sure that youngsters can't get their hands on them either. Some things just make perfect sense. And they make a lot more sense, apparently, in the democratically dominated and run New York State Assembly than they do in the Republican dominated and run New York State Senate. So, yes, we all have to fight for that. And we ought to make sure that the Nassau County Legislature also reflects the true composition of the demographic of the people who live in Nassau County, and then we'll get some better laws in Nassau County as well. Laura?
Chuck, I could not agree with you more, and that's why we need to elect Democrats to the Nassau County Legislature. Judy Jacobs, some of you may have known her. She passed away recently. She was a county legislator from Syosset area. Wonderful, wonderful woman, and this was her cause. She called us the donut hole. Smoking, 21 in Suffolk. Smoking, 21 in the city. Nassau, it's still 19. She campaigned on this. She got everyone involved. She roped us all in, and we really tried to make the case to the majority in the legislature. Guys, this is easy. 21, let's just do it. I don't know why they wouldn't do it. I don't know if they were beholden to the convenience store guys or what it was. They wouldn't do it. They're still not doing it. So, this is my pitch. If you live in a district with a Republican legislator, vote Democrat for this alone. Come on, let's get into the 21st century and make smoking 21 a reality in Nassau County.
We were not successful. Many of us maybe were on other tickets, whatever, I don't know. But I know we are faced with so much going forward that when I see these pleasing faces looking back at me, I think of what we are facing for 2017 and 2018. It is no joke, folks. We have to do something to make sure our Democrats get elected. I'm not asking you which one of the three, but it's got to be a Democrat to run Nassau County. We must do that. Thank you so much for the support. You know, this was not easy. We did it, didn't we? And we're going to stick together. If you need us to come from Lakeview, Rockville Center, West Hempstead, Roosevelt, Freeport, Plainview, wherever we need to go, we must go to get our Democrats elected. I don't call you elected officials anymore. I stopped that. Too many people were taken out in handcuffs. So they think that they're very important. So I refer to you as public servants, because that's what you are. We're proud of you. But you're not to think that you're above the law. So I have adapted my description of who you are. You are our public servants, and we love you for it. Yes, elected public servants. Thank you so much.
Okay, we have one more question. Okay.
Special districts.
Interesting. Yes, special districts. So we're blessed, or is it, I don't know. Everyone has a different opinion. Special districts. So we live in a crazy patchwork quilt of municipalities. If you live in Rockville Center, you have a village board and a mayor. You have a town board and a supervisor. You have a county legislature and a county executive, and that's before you even get to the state level. So sometimes you wonder why people are disengaged. It's overwhelming. Within, say, a village, you've got a fire district, a school district. Sometimes you have a water district. There's something called a sidewalk district in some places. It's just the way we evolved as a county. You know, it wasn't planned. Let's start a hamlet here. Let's start a fire department there. I want a village. How about a city? and that's the situation that we're in. So there have been efforts in the past to consolidate, right? People don't want it. You may make the argument, but your taxes will go down. They vote them down. Where I live in Baldwin, there was a referendum, it was a public vote to get rid of the sanitary district. And guess what? I think it was 2 or 3 times more people came out to keep their garbage men than come out to vote for the school budget, which is, 2/3 of their tax bill. People like local control. Same thing out in Suffolk County. There was twice there was a referendum to merge 2 school districts, Southampton and Tuckahoe. Twice, tanked. People wanted local control. So, this is my long-winded way of saying that we need accountability at all levels of government. We need cooperation among all levels of government. The governor has an interesting plan that the mayors hate, including this mayor and the mayor of Freeport, which I also represent, because they're saying, okay, so the plan in a nutshell is that the county executives would help the local municipalities, not school districts, but all the other districts, share services. Sounds great. I'm for anything that we can share and save money. But say in the village of Freeport, the mayor hasn't raised taxes in however long he's been there, 4 years. The budget's doing great. He's a business guy. It's efficient. It's going well. He's like, I want the county executive of Nassau County to be dealing with my scene. No, I'm good. Thanks. So how do we navigate this? This is the $64,000 question. If we can lower taxes, I'm all for it, but we have to make sure that we have the buy-in from the local communities and the local districts, because people will reject it. You have to make the case that you're doing the right thing and that they're going to keep their local identity and their local control. Otherwise, guess who has the power? All of you. If something to merge districts or to consolidate is going to be successful, it has to come from the grassroots. It can't come from politicians telling people to do it.
Well, it's a good news and a bad news situation. A couple of counties have done this. Montgomery County in Maryland and Fairfax County in Virginia used to be very much like Nassau County, where we literally have hundreds and hundreds of governments. Short story. In 2012, Mangano wanted to bond to pay salaries, and NYFA told him he couldn't do it. Mangano told Jimmy Carver that he could do it, that Albany would do it for him. He brought Jimmy Carver to Albany, and we had a meeting. So I met with Mangano, and I met with Carver. Had they done this, had they bonded against NYFA, there'd have been a crisis in the municipal bond market. This is very serious stuff. I told him, and Newsday reported this, I stopped him from doing that. Now there was retribution, there was vengeance. Harvey Wiesenberg wanted a bill that would have helped Long Beach. I'm sorry, darling. It's almost hysterically funny to have to describe this. That Harvey had a bill that Long Beach needed. Retribution? The Republicans in the Senate wouldn't pass it. But they exacted retribution on me. You know what it was? I had 3 or 4 bills that the Republicans wanted for some of their water districts so that their commissioners could have big cars and collect money and go places and be paid to have their trips paid to go to conventions. What a tragedy. They wouldn't pass them. I thought it was just beautiful irony. We can do this, but we need the consensus of the community. I believe if we have the consensus of the community, because it's obvious that all these separate districts cost us a lot more money in taxes than need to be spent. If we have a county executive with strength and a county executive who will actually speak to the members of the community and go throughout Nassau County, throughout all of Nassau County, every neighborhood, then we can start to make a difference. I believe I am that person, and that's why I also have some endorsements. I have the endorsement of the Speaker of the Assembly, Carl Heastie, the Majority Leader of the Assembly, Joe Morelli, the Chairman of the Real Property Tax Committee, crucial to change anything with real property taxes, Sandy Galiff. My friend Tony Durso has endorsed me. And I've got a couple of other endorsements as well. I know other people have got endorsements that are important, but I want to let you know that I also have the endorsement of Congressman Steve Israel and the endorsement of Congressman Gary Ackerman. Let's make Nassau modern. It's time for Nassau 2.0. We can do it if we do it together. Thank you.
I agree with Laura Curran that local control is extremely important. We should value it and retain it as much as possible, especially since there is no proven good economic reason to effect a lot of special district consolidation. The prior controller, Howard Weitzman, did a study with regards to the benefits of the economic benefits of consolidation. And what he found in the study that he did, I think it was done back in 2008, is that there could be, if it was done perfectly, there would be a net benefit of $19 million in savings, if it was done perfectly. And we all know that nothing government does is done perfectly. So $19 million was not a significant benefit to proceed with consolidation and take away the local control that our communities have over their destinies, over the services that they have and is provided to them. But there are areas, though, that are extremely beneficial and becoming critical to our economic well-being that we do have consolidation. We have 156 zoning jurisdictions in Nassau County, and nobody wants development in the backyard. New York City has one, and they plan. And it's very easy, if you stay within the plan, to build. It takes an average of 2 years to get a permit to build in Nassau County, which adds to the cost, adds to the lack of affordable housing. So I would be certainly in favor and a big proponent that we consolidate the zoning and start planning for our communities and derive the benefits of lower cost development, more affordable housing. The other area that I think is critically important, or is becoming even more every day, is to protect our groundwater. That's not solely confined within each community, with each special district. What one community does can affect another community. And it's important that we recognize that it's a precious resource that we have in the ground, and we need to protect it. And that should be the responsibility, a centralized responsibility, with all the assets and all the resources and all the signs to ensure that we continue to have drinkable water. Thank you.